mental toughness.
Listen, stop feeling sorry for yourself. Come on, man. What's wrong with you?
The mental toughness mindset.
I had to go to grow.
Covers up. The pick happens. The pick happens.
Martin Luther King.
You got challenges that you're going to run across.
Okay, we're live here for another episode of Elite Psyche, the Mental Toughness Podcast. And this is a podcast that talks to, in my opinion, elite individuals, the ones who have gone through certain things. And, you know, I believe that anybody who is successful in this world has to have that mental toughness because you've gone through some things, you've gone through some challenges to get to where you are. And so whether it's an athlete or a businessman or today a mayor, it's a thing that I believe everybody has to go through because there's challenges in life. And I think that's where most people fall off on that mindset, that mental toughness where, you know, hey, you got to keep fighting. You got to keep swinging. And today, my guest, I want to read a little bit on before I bring him up, because I believe that this is where he is now in his life. This guy is well known. He's all over YouTube, and you know he was the mayor of Detroit. I still call him the mayor, but you know he had experienced a few things, and today we want to talk about his book, Off the Grid, man. You know I'm a reader, got a book club. I'm always talking about books. And when I got this book and I ordered it, I couldn't put it down. I mean, I got everything in this thing highlighted like crazy. It's just so many highlights in here and things. He has some great stories. Probably one of the best guys that I've heard with metaphors and analogies, because people speak that way. And so you can pick up a person. You can really understand them when they use different analogies and metaphors. And he used a lot through this book that really painted a picture for us. But I want to read something, and y'all need to bear with me for a minute because this might be a longer read, but I believe that this is where he is now, right before I bring him up. So I'm going to start here where it says, I graduated from college with honors and went on to law school where I graduated and passed the Michigan bar exam, the very first test I tested. I was elected to Michigan State House of Representatives at 26 years old and elected by my colleagues to be the leader of that body at 30 years old. At 31, I was elected mayor of Detroit. Now, there's a lot of firsts and youngest in my bio, but none of it mattered when I was wandering in the wilderness during my trial and subsequent incarceration. At that point, all I wanted to do was kill something. He said, I had no idea what really needed to be killed when I left Detroit. Killing my foolish pride, arrogance, ignorance, and insatiable appetite to do my thing should have made up the list of what had to be mortified in my life. But I was sincerely committed to keeping all my stuff. I was tenacious and passionate about being right. I did not care about one thing about being righteous. I just wanted to be right. I only cared about living life my way. I wasn't a criminal, but I wasn't living or trying to live up to the highest moral standard. In fact, moral excellence people made me itch. Moral excellent people made me itch. They got on my nerves and killed my buzz. I considered them to be soft, creamy puff, and absolutely no fun. But one day, truth showed up. June 2014, while incarcerated in federal prison, I was moved to bow down and humble myself of an encounter with the truth. The Lord Jesus Christ, an outcome of knowing truth, is that lies become so clear to me to see. Looking in the mirror becomes a very painful endeavor because once you experience new life, you can clearly see the dead corpse, the hell that held the dangerously wrong ideas and inclinations in his soul for so long. The light of the truth shines bright, sometimes too bright. It makes you close It makes you close your eyes, wander in self-imposed darkness, and finally seek help. The dead man was brave, confident, and full of swag. His spunk and bravado moved with purpose and tenacity. This new man was confused, thrown off, and needed support, assistance, and love. The new reality of who I've been and who I was called to be was confusing and uncomfortable at first. But I knew in my inner man that it was right. As I gathered myself and followed the instructions given to me by truth, I noticed I was handcuffed to and carrying the old man, Kwame of Detroit, along with me. He was dead weight for sure, burdensome and heavy as hell, but he was my dude, my main man, my oldest friend. But that wasn't the only reason I carried him along. I also carried the old Kwame of Detroit along with me because of some of the people, things, and attributes attached to him. I enjoyed them still, being a part of me. I wasn't ready to let them go, so I had to carry the dead weight of this 300-pound old man to keep a part of his life with me. I was not only handcuffed to him, I was also handcuffed to his friends, his swag, and his character. This man, my journey, my walk, profoundly tough. It was grueling sometimes, fraught with difficulty, roadblocks, hills, and valleys. Sometimes the handcuffs dug into my skin so hard, the pain provoked me to cry out in agony. The blood spilled, the scars and the marks would never heal, but I continued to struggle through the pain. I was determined to carry him with me down the road until that day of truth. On that day, during my second year in the federal prison, there was no lightning, no thunder, just a simple perception, an instinct that filled me with the resolve of the courage to make a definite decision to let Kwame of Detroit go. He was too heavy. He was dead. I noticed I was the only one keeping him alive. Well, me and the community, people and religious folks who sent me out into the wilderness, but all of that part was of the formal things and not of the new thing. In my cell, going over the statement from the prosecutor and judge in my federal trial, I focused first on the judge's statement at my sentencing. Not one word addressed the crimes of which I was accused. Instead, she used her entire statement to call out my moral failings. I've been angry at her for so long and so many reasons, not to least which was the way she described me in the speech. But in that moment, I realized something that hurt me deeply. Every word of what she said about me was true. When the prosecutor explained to the jury, we don't have a smoking gun, and directed the jury to the judge to judge me by the company I kept, he had a valid point. Birds of a feather, he claimed, flocked together, and he was right. Many of the people who testified against me were people I should never have welcomed into my life. If a man's character was judged by the company he kept, then mine had been found severely lacking. As I read the statements again and again, something in me cracked open. I didn't deserve everything I've gone through in the federal court. I didn't deserve the language in prison, but for the first time, I realized I did deserve to be punished. My actions had hurt so many people, and actions always have consequences. I put the statements aside and went out and walked on the track for a while. The truth was what was said about me weighed me down and wore on me. I couldn't walk it off, so I headed to the chapel where I ran into Bruce Smith, a volunteer from Yukon, Oklahoma. Bruce saw me in my despair. He listened for a moment, and then he asked, had I had a personal relationship with Jesus Christ? Sitting in the back of the chapel, I thought of how the judge had pointed out the fact that my lack of character and integrity had caused me to miss the opportunity to do something great. I considered how the sum of the people I spent my time with reflected who I was. I didn't like that said about me. I explained to Bruce that no, I didn't have a personal relationship with the Lord. I wasn't even sure if I knew what that meant. Bruce told me a simple story of truth. He talked to me about the gospel of Jesus Christ in a way no one had ever before. A gifted evangelist. He didn't need fancy words and metaphors, just the straight gospel. Bruce told me Jesus wanted me to be the Lord of my life. He wanted to heal me of my sinful nature, forgive me, and make me a new person. In that moment, I was finally broken enough to receive his message, and I realized just how much I wanted to be made new. That day, I accepted Christ as my Lord, my Savior, and my King, and I would spend the next several years studying the word and growing in my faith. And I would need every bit of that knowledge and belief. Man, when I read that, I said, this is where my brother Kwame Kilpatrick, ex-mayor of Detroit, is today. Man, he's a spiritual guy. He's out here teaching the word, doing a lot of great things for society. And that's why I wanted to really do an interview with him today, because, I want to talk about a lot of things, and especially from this book, because, again, I love the book. I'm a book reader. And so without further ado, I want to bring up ex-mayor, or the mayor of Detroit. I just still call him the mayor of Detroit. And also a spiritual leader now, my brother, Mr. Kwame Kilpatrick. Are you there, sir? Let's see if we can bring him up on the screen. There he is.
I'm here. Wow.
Man, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Tony. I'm doing very well. That was it used to be kind of sobering hearing that, but now it's such an incredibly joyful thing to hear those words back. That was an incredible day. It's kind of emotional. That day was one of the lowest points in my life. And to walk in there, and God tailor-made this Vietnam veteran, right-wing conservative guy from Yukon, Oklahoma, that didn't take no crap from nobody. He was just tailor-made for that moment. Somebody that in my previous life, I'd have just went in there and argued with him about politics.
Right.
I was poured out at that moment. I didn't have nothing left, and he was standing there waiting on me. And I literally never had a day like that one again after this moment. I had sadness, I've had even depression, but it was never the same. That day, everything changed in my life. Like I said, there was no lightning and thunder, but I knew something happened inside of me. And so from that point on, I got a job at the chapel the very next week, and ended up working in the various chapels that I was in over the next 6.5 years I was in. I was always in the chapel, teaching classes, learning the Bible, being a student of the Bible, taking classes from seminary, and preaching the word of God. I ended up preaching, teaching Bible studies and everything else. And so that's what God has had me do since I walked out of that place.
Wow. I remember reading a little bit more of that in detail toward the end of the book, and you kind of painted a picture how that morning you just woke up and walked straight over there. You're like, you didn't see nobody. I don't know if anybody spoke to you, but you did a beeline straight over there.
Yeah. That day I went to the library first, and I was real messed up. My sons, my older sons, Jelani and Jaleel, twins, they were having a lot of problems. They ended up leaving the house, and they got them an apartment. My mother, they tricked grandma. She sent some money. They got them a little apartment in the hood in Dallas. They was in Oak Cliff, and they got an apartment, and they was out of the house. They had stopped going to school. It was just a terrible, and I couldn't do anything. My youngest son, Jonas, at that time, Joe was probably about 12. And so he was having problems. Joe had all A's all his life, and he had just started getting D's without me locked up I'd been locked up for about a year at this time, a little more than a year. And it was just too much. I couldn't get out. I've been denied for every appeal. It was just, I couldn't go to the library. I just sat down, and I saw a book about the goals of incarceration and all of these different things I was supposed to be. I closed that book. I was just like, there's nothing left. I got up and I walked straight to the chapel. I still don't know to this day why I went to the chapel, except I was led. And so when I got in there, that was Bruce Smith. Hey, big guy, So I said, okay, all right, what is this? And when we sat down and talked about the gospel in the back of that old chapel at El Reno FCI, it changed my life. And I thank God for him, and I thank God for that particular day with destiny that he had on my calendar that I know about.
When you also said, I can remember this clearly, that you questioned some of the people in there when they said they knew what the meaning of traveling with the Lord or something like that. You're like, man, y'all don't,
Yeah. How many people have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ?
Right.
All his hands went up, and I'm looking around. I didn't put my hand up. I'm saying, these guys, right, whatever. And And then he said, with Kwame, that's what he called Kwame.
Yeah.
You don't have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And I said, no, I don't even know what that means. I don't. And I said, I don't think these dudes do either.
Right.
I don't think they just talking.
They just talking, yeah.
At this point, I'm irritated. I'm just,
right.
I don't know. Whatever gonna happen is gonna happen. I don't care about none of these people. And so he was like, finally, some honesty in this place. He was a charged up. I'm talking about, sergeant in the military. He was something. But I had to have a tough guy because I always thought that, the men, it was a few for sure, but most of the men that were standing for Christ were kind of soft to me. They were clean, puffy. And I just so I needed that kind of guy, a military guy who was just radical about it, revolutionary about it, but still a man. And I had to see that kind of guy. Yeah. And, he was tailor-made. And there was other guys there, John Cotton, who was a lifer there, a man's man, but also just absolutely sold out for Jesus Christ.
That's the guy from Houston, right?
Yeah, that's my man from Houston. So he's out now. We just talked yesterday. So
okay. Do you speak with the minister guy that you
talking about with Bruce?
Yeah.
I talked to Bruce when I got out. Okay. They're not allowed to communicate with us for about a year. So through some family members, I was able to talk to him for a second. So I can talk to him now. So I'm actually about to reconnect with him.
Okay. Well, cool, man. Man, I want to jump into this book and talk a lot about it. But I want to kind of start off with, I noticed throughout the book, all your analogies and metaphors, especially when it comes to music, I really like that. But before I get even started with that, tell me, what was it like, growing up in Detroit, man, during the time that you was growing up high school and all that?
I never saw what everybody else saw about Detroit. Detroit was, for me, it was everything. I didn't want to ever live anywhere else. It was the Black Mecca. So for me at that particular point, it was everything. From the biggest mansion in the city, it was a Black person, and to the smallest shacks, it was a Black person. I mean, it was more architects, more Black doctors, more Black engineers.
I knew he was kind of smart because the guy never brought home books.
Saw people, politicians, Congress people, mayors, they were all look like me.
He was basically a product of his environment. And the church that we came up in, the Shrines of Black Madonna, we taught basically that Black folks had to make their way in this world, that there was nobody riding in to help us. In fact, they were basically against us when we tried to do something.
For me, it was just, one of those cities where you can grow up and believe you could be anything. You could be a firefighter, a police officer. You could be mayor. You could be whatever you wanted to be. You saw that reflection and that presented in somebody in the city.
Out of that environment, he understood what it was that we were attempting to change the way Black folks was living. Basically trying to have the same things in this American culture that everybody else had.
Detroit also had parks and recs, so playing ball, PAL leagues, football. I was very much a part of the community I lived in.
That's why I thought he would be a great politician, because he had that was his background. His mother was when he decided to go, his mother was a state rep and went on to Congress. I was a county commissioner. Went on to work in administration in the county. And
my mother was the woman with the afro and the bracelets that was picketing and walking in front of stores. She's something else. And she got in politics. She ran for the state house when I was 8 years old and won that seat.
Our whole political focus was to help Black folks achieve things that they couldn't get by themselves, because there was no help coming from anywhere else. That's the one thing that we always understood, and that's what he understood going into.
So we were always involved through our church, through our parents and family, with political activism. And so for me, that was my city. Detroit, man, it was nothing compared to it. I went to the public school system there. And so I was a Detroit guy, Detroit kid.
Right.
Grew up in the boys club, grew up on the PAL teams, grew up in, that. So Detroit was for me. I didn't think anything else was like it. I found out that it wasn't, and plus, it put the world on wheels. So we a car place. So, GM Ford Chrysler. Then you also have Motown. So you got Marvin Gaye and Stevie Wonder and Diana Ross and Smokey Robinson, and everybody's aunt, uncle, father, mother went to school with one of them. So
yeah, that was my next question was Motown, man. Did you experience any of that, like, Diana Ross, Supremes, and all? I mean, like, just in being in the area. I know it was Motown days was kind of going away, but
yes.
But did you see any of that?
I didn't see it like my parents saw it. But because I'm from there, we all have an affinity to Motown. So by the time Motown moved to LA, we still got that Motown, like from the Jacksons and all of that. So, but we all know all the Temptation songs and the Four Tops and the Supremes. You still gotta know them. To be a Detroiter, you gotta know some Smokey Robinson. You can't we take your card if you don't know My Girl or Ain't Too Proud to Beg. I mean, what's wrong with you? So it was that all that was before for me. I came around after, but it was very much a part of everybody in my age group's parents' lives. And so Diana Ross went to the same high school I went to. Smokey graduated from high school with my dad, same high school. So it was the same, you kind of got that same thing out there. This is Motown. This is who we are. This is the ingenuity of automotive engineering industry and also of music.
How long has that What Up Though been going around?
I don't know, but it's been since at least the early 80s.
Okay.
I've been hearing that early 80s since I was a kid. I saw an episode of BMF, and that's what he was what up though, So that's a Detroit, that's a whole Detroit greeting right there. So that's been around since the early 80s.
Man, I hear a lot of people saying that. So look, you talk about hip hop in your book, and some of the analogies and some of the stories from KRS-One and things of that sort. How do you feel about it today, though, man? And what does it? I mean, because I know it changes and things. We can either sound like our grandparents now, but I mean, it's so popular now and it's so part of society. But the effects of it, do you see anything that you feel like needs to be addressed when it comes to that? Like, to that helps, that would help the mentality of African American community, because we so in depth into it, but it's not like it used to be. So what do you feel about that?
I grew up on Public Enemy and NWA.
Right.
KRS-One and Too Short, Right. So I had both of those things working in me. But the key is I had both. Right. And I think what's happened to hip hop is now there's more of just kind of one way to be able to poetically state something across a hip hop track. And so it's all about money, hoes, and clothes. Everything is about something that's other than, the community and just life in the community. One of the refreshing things is when Drake came out, he could be uniquely Drake and not talk about gangster stuff. But then he moved over to money and power, money, power, and partying. And so now you don't really have any alternatives that are popular in culture and in music. But I think that was deliberate. I think you got them out there.
I was going to ask you that. Yeah.
They just don't get the airplay. And so that's one of the issues that I have. These young guys are so talented. I'm in Atlanta. So you got Lil Baby and all of these guys here, Rick Ross and them, they're here. But at the same time, these have immense talent. But we're not, when Baby did is Bigger Than Black and White. So he had one album, one song that did that. It was phenomenal that the people my age now can connect to him and say, man, he's saying something. Right. At least he's saying something. And that's what we just want somebody, because they have so much influence. I have a 12-year-old now. I'm remarried. We have a 12-year-old. And this kid ain't never lived in no hood. He don't know nothing about no hood.
Not all that. Right.
But he's so influenced by the images and the power of the hip hop community now. So it's all guns and robbing and stealing and gangster, and they throwing up gang signs for whatever gang they're in. He's influenced by that. So as a parent, it's like, man, it's way more than that. That's
right.
Not, you don't even know. But I have a real problem with that's the only thing that we're showing from our community. And I think that's pretty deliberate. I think record companies know that sell, and it's easy for people to continue to perpetuate that crazy notion about our people, and particularly black men and black women.
And black women also.
Just whores.
Right.
Everything is bending over. Everything is sexual. Everything is nothing about the MC Lights, the Queen Latifahs, the Yo-Yos. We had a whole lot of people. Even Salt Pepper could do party records, but it wasn't whorish. No, so it's a lot that just is not there right now that I wish we could have back in our music. Because
it's so strong that you have to fight against it almost. And I'm sure in some of your messages that something is said about it, but it's like I said, it's so strong, it's overpowering that because society loves it now. They even have it in all the commercials and things of that sort. So
absolutely, it's mainstream.
Tell me about FAMU. You know what I'm saying? I'm a SWAT guy. I went to Jackson State.
State. I think sonic boom of the South.
Yeah. I think we have a 3-0 record against FAMU. We only played FAMU 3 times. And I always tell Marvin, I said we 3-0 against FAM. So
yeah.
But were you there when Dion was at Florida State?
Yeah. I was my freshman year was his junior year.
Okay.
Oh yeah. I was there same time. He was the man. He used to ride around the city in that little prime time vehicle. He had a little black one. Come by. Right? He was the guy then. So Dion prime time. He was that then. So big Jerry curl running around the campus. So so I was down there then. So yeah.
How did you choose FAMU?
It's interesting. I really hadn't been to a black college, in Detroit. I never, it's not a black now it is, but then there's a lot of people going to black colleges.
Right.
My uncle, or I call him my uncle, is really my father's childhood friend. He actually was the coach at basketball at Florida A&M.
Okay.
His name is Josh Giles, and he had just left that job and took a job at Polk County Community College down in Winter Haven, Florida. He was the basketball coach and athletic coordinator there for years. But he told me to send him a tape. I was talking to him on the phone, send me a tape. So I sent him a tape. He sent it to his friend, Alonzo Highsmith, who was the defensive coordinator over at FAMU. And they called me, and we went down for a visit, me and my father. I got to the airport late. We was going to a basketball game. You can relate to this. I've never been to a black college, nothing. Right. I ain't never seen this before. I went to Michigan State. I never been to. So we go straight to the gym. They playing Bethune-Cookman, and when we walk in, it's just the end of the second quarter. They're about to start halftime, and you remember Dougie Fresh the show. So we sit down, and I hear that this band stood up. And they do, and them girls is out there shaking. I said, Lord, where are we? I said, man, listen, I'm coming here. Now, I ain't seen a classroom. I hadn't been to the football facilities. I don't know what kind of education they got. I don't know nothing. But my father looked at me. He said, you probably should come here.
Hey, that was my story at Jackson State. My sister was 2 years ahead of me, and she was at Jackson State. So I went there to visit her to see they was playing Grambling that weekend. And man, when I got there, they had a party that Friday night, what we call on the plaza outside.
Yeah.
And that was it. I said, this is all the recruiting I need right here.
That's right. I'll be right here. Well, we left that basketball game. We went to a party, and I was out there like, wow, the older guy. I did this to the freshmen later. They gave me a little shirt, made me feel like I was already on the team.
Yeah.
And I said, man, where y'all? I said, is it like this every day? I mean, I was blown away just being there for the weekend. I signed my letter. I had been to Central Michigan, Toledo, and Bowling Green, those 3 places. Okay. And I went. That was my 4th visit down to Florida A&M, and I signed. I read a paper. I was asking them, for the paper. I'll be right here. And so when I got back, I had a Florida A&M sweatshirt. I went to school Monday at Cass in Detroit. I said, I'm out. Yeah, y'all ain't never seen that.
Yeah, you like old boy on what he called his wife said.
Richie, I think I'm falling in love with you.
Hello, it's Daddy. Hey, darling, put Mommy on the phone. Yeah, Barbara, it's Richie. Yeah, look it, I ain't never coming home no more. Take it easy.
Hey, my mom thought, because I grew up in Birmingham, and my mom thought I'm gonna be coming home every weekend, and I was like, she ain't see me for a minute.
No, I see y'all quick.
Yeah, she ain't see me for a minute, man.
Yeah.
So
it was tough though when I got there. That heat.
Yeah.
Tough. My freshman
year
was
you got to get used to that.
Yeah, but after that, it was great. I pledged my sophomore year, pledged Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, and then I ended up making all conference my junior year, then All American my senior year.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so I did pretty well in football, and I graduated from Florida A&M with honors. It was the best thing happened to me. That school really changed the way I think about a whole lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It was just good to see so many positive, excellent, tenacious Black men and women at that age. They provoked me to get better because I was chilling, hanging, talking about, man, and then you got what you done? What are you focused on? And so it was just a different thing for me.
You know, one of the things I talk about is that how many Africans I met, you know what I'm saying? Because I hadn't, really right. Man, I had one of my partners, man, he was African and he wrote in the Jackson State newspaper, right? And I knew he had wrote this article under another name, but they was trying to figure out who wrote it because he was talking about that all he needed to do was get the females a strawberry soda and 2 pieces of Church's chicken, and he was
wow.
Boy, they got pissed.
He got his head wore out after that.
They was looking for him on campus. Every African, are you the one? Are you the one?
Yeah.
Who wrote that article?
That's not me.
But yeah, meeting Africans and seeing how they lived and just getting an overall picture of the world. I always say that's just a HBCU. That alone is an experience that a person should take. The diversity within the just Black communities around the world is astonishing. To meet people from the islands and to live next door with the cats from Virgin Islands, and then down the hall you got the guy from Nigeria. And exactly.
Then you got the guy from like Hayhira, Georgia. That's the first guy that ever went to college in this life. And then that melted, because people say I don't want to go to a Black college because it's not diversity. There's so much diversity in our own people. It's amazing. You can catch everything. There's the Tennessee guy from the Chicago guy, 2 totally different guys. The guy that grew up in LA and the guy that grew up in New York. They all at these colleges. And it's a real interesting thing to kind of get that. And this, even when you come out of the school, you kind of a part of a larger fraternity. Oh yeah. And I don't care if you go into GM, Ford, Chrysler, Microsoft, or wherever. There's somebody from one of these colleges that are doing some amazing things in those companies that there's a connection. Right. I had partners from Chicago, man, that took me home during spring break. And I remember first meeting one of my roommates, and he said he was from the coast. Now, I didn't know it was the coast of Mississippi. So I'm thinking, you from California? You're like, no, I'm from Biloxi and Gulfport and all. At that time, I didn't know how big, what was going to happen down there. I went down there with him a couple of times to see the beach, but when we were there, it was nothing there, not like it is now. So, but yeah, you meet all kind of people, man. You meet all kind of people. Yeah. Let's jump into, you painted that picture when I first started reading the book about when you were talking to Ortez through the keyhole about
that you're going to be released. And he was like, man, where you hear that from? He said,
right.
I'm telling you, God is said that to me, and I'm hearing it. So please come back. And you said he was a man of his word, and he came back and opened the cell doors, and you was like, it was true. So take me back to that feeling of, when he opened them doors and said, that you're going to be going home.
Well, it was the last day of the Trump presidency, and all day on CNN per the orderlies. I couldn't see a TV. I was in isolation, and so I couldn't see anything. And so all day, this guy, Fred Bradley, my man from Texarkana, I'm giving you a shout out. He kept coming by, big homie. They talking about Trump about to do a whole lot of commutations tonight. Man, you in there, man. I know you in there. I said, man, I received that in the name of Jesus. I'm telling Fred, so Fred gets off work. They lock him up at 9 o'clock. So he came by right then and said, man, they ain't said no names yet, but they still talking about it's coming out tonight. So I was expecting something. Now, I had no idea to be me. I just believed it. I believed it because I received the word from the Lord in my 3rd year that I was getting out in the 7th year. This is 39 days short of 8 years. So I'm just holding on to this. My sons are holding on to it. We just believe in God for this word. And that night, at the midnight count, Ortiz is coming by, and I'm like, hey, Ortiz, man, I just got a commutation. He said, who told you that, Kilpatrick? I said, no, Fred, you go check the computer. And you come back, I'm telling you, I got one. The ones Trump talking about doing. He said, oh, my God, who told you? So I said, the Lord told me. Yeah. He said, oh, Kilpatrick. I said, no, Fred, the Lord told me. If you come on, just check. He said, listen, after count, I'll come back and I'll talk to you. So I said, all right. So I laid down in the bed. At 1 o'clock, he hit that door. Open the door. Now, you're not supposed to open the door in isolation. You're not supposed to do that. He opens the door with the 2 copies of the papers in my town, Detroit Free Press and Detroit News. And he said, man, you got a commutation. Man, you getting out of here. And he said, who told you? I said, I told you, Ortiz, the Lord told me. But it was the most exhilarating. I fell down on my knees after he closed that door. And I said, wow. Oh my God. I laid all the way out on that concrete floor. And I said, I'm getting out of here. And it was strange because you got to understand, Tony, they had announced that I was getting out of there twice before. I signed release papers and they rescinded the release.
Wow.
So that happened in May, and that also happened in October. So I was happy, but I was cautiously optimistic. I wouldn't just release. At 5 o'clock in the morning, the warden came to the door and he said, Kilpatrick, it's true, and I'm going to get you out of here quick and quiet. That's when I said, there we go, right there. Let's get on out of here. Let me take.
But I know you probably was still thinking something gonna happen.
Listen, I'm waiting there. They come back. They let me take a shower. I put on some sweatpants. I'm waiting again. They came. He said, I'm gonna come back and get you because they didn't want to tell me when I was leaving because it was a security issue. Mm-hmm. But he said quick and quiet. So at 10 o'clock, they came back. It's time to go. I said, whoa. I don't need none of this. Let's go. Let's get on out here. I went through the doors, got to the front. It was a real good thing. I got in the front. I went to the car, and I was about to get in the back like usual. And the CO said, Kilpatrick, it's over. Get in the front, man. I said, wow. So I don't have any handcuffs on, no belly chains, no feet. And I get in the car. We ride to the airport. I get in there, and I told you this is like the craziest thing ever. I get in the airport, and I'm like looking around like this is it's a setup, man. I
know they gonna come and get me.
Yeah, they coming to get me, man. The CEOs were laughing at me, like, man, listen, get on the plane. I'm like, they was like, I said, so y'all going up here? They said, no, once it's over. Our job was to get you here. So once you go to security, we out. I said, okay, let me go to security, right? So I go to security. I ain't got nothing to put up there. I ain't nothing to put up there. I don't have no bags or nothing. Let's just go. So we go through security, and I get on the plane. I go up to the lady. I say, ma'am, I said, if it's all right, I'm in the last seat. I was in like row 30-something, in the last seat of the thing. I said, is it all right if I get on first? She laughed because she understood where I was coming.
What you was doing?
I looked like it. And she let me on first. She called me up, and I got on the plane. The whole time I'm in the back, Tony. The whole time I'm waiting. I'm watching everybody get on.
Someone come down the aisle.
I'm waiting for somebody to come out and Kilpatrick. I need to talk to you. hey, excuse me, sir. Come on up, please.
I ain't going.
I said, no, y'all got to peel me off here. Everybody about to get a show. Pull your phones out. I'm not getting off this thing, right? So I'm in the back. They closed the door. And it wasn't until we took off and I'm going above those trees that I said, oh my God. I said, wow, this is it. I'm going home. When I got off the plane in Atlanta, I went down the baggage claim and I don't see anybody. So I asked a lady there to use her phone and she let me use her cell phone. And I called my sister. They said, we outside. When I was about to head outside, I saw my sons running in the door.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, it was over. And, 45 minutes later, I was sitting in my sister's house with my mother and family, cousins, kids, everybody eating crab legs and cheesecake and everything else for the first time in about 8.5 years. So it was good.
Yeah, I saw the video of you outside the airport. I guess everybody saw that one, saying? With your sons and everything. And so, man, that's a you were cut 21 years.
Yes.
Wow.
And I thank the Lord for that. It was all him. I was in that cell for 225 days praying that the heart of the king is in the hand of the Lord. And like the rivers of water, he could turn it whichever way he pleases. And I would say, Lord, please turn President Trump's heart towards me. Lord, you hold his heart in your hand. And so I hadn't met Donald Trump. I didn't know Donald Trump. And what I found out after I got out, I talked to Jared Kushner. I've talked to Alice Johnson. There was a historic meeting on January 12th in the Oval Office. Alice Johnson, the president, and also Jared Kushner and the White House counsel were the only people in the room. And I've gotten an account from Alice and Jared Kushner that day because that was a steamy meeting. The White House counsel didn't want me released. No, we can't release this guy. And Alice was advocating for my release. And the president eventually said, I'm going to help the guy. This was January 12th. Now, we got to understand January 12th, that's just 6 days after January 6th. So the Capitol, D.C. was reeling over what happened at the Capitol and what all of the people, and they were calling for Trump's resignation. And so during that time, he was in a meeting in the Oval Office having a conversation about me, a guy that was locked up in a solitary confinement cell in Louisiana. For me, that is just the most amazing, unbelievable, miraculous thing in the world. And the president that most people thought didn't have a heart turned his heart towards me and said, I'm going to help your guy. My commutation was signed at 8:40 the next morning, January 13th. They didn't announce it to January 20th and let me out to January 20th. But when I got the paper, it says January the 13th. So you got to understand, the president told Alice Johnson and Kushner, I'm going to help her, be quiet, White House counsel, I'm going to help your guy. They presented the paperwork to him the next morning. He signed it and put it with the rest of them that he was going to announce on January 20th. For me, it's just a miracle. And on January 15th, Tony, I was in the cell and I had this incredible moment of just depression. I'm going crazy. And it was this happened today, be a day that I could use the phone. Those people that have been locked up, you only get the phone every 30 days when you're in isolation. So I can use the phone on January 15th. I called my now wife. I called her and we had this plan on her 40th birthday, January 28th. I would be home. I'm celebrating your birthday. We have been talking about it for 2 years. I'm gonna celebrate your birthday with you, on your 40th birthday. And so I said, I'm just not feeling well today, honestly. And it was the first. She said, well, if you're not here, we're gonna be together. And something quickened me. No, I got to get out of here. And I went back to the cell. They closed the thing. I sat in the cell, and it was just crazy that day. But what I found out later is that I was going through hell, high water, depression, worry, anxiety, anger, and it was already signed.
Already done.
It was already done.
Yeah.
And so when we in church, they said it's already done, or they singing a song, it's already done. It was already done, and I was going through all that hell for absolutely no reason. God had already moved.
Yeah. I remember in the book when you told her that I'm gonna be there, and she said, you know, if not, I still love you. We still gonna be there for you.
That's right.
Yeah, but you like, I'm gonna be there, and you know, I'm sure that thought was, you know, to stay positive and believe. I'm sure, but you like, I know that little dot was still there because I think you said at one point in the book how you would talk to your kids and be, you know, positive to them, and then you'll get back in the cell and just lose your mind. And God told you to shut up and sit down and be quiet because
that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
You know, I got this.
Most people that have been in that condition, you understand that you have to come out for visits and even on phone calls, and you have to strengthen your family. You know, it's a lot of guys in there that play war with me, trying to get money and still trying to be manipulators. But for the most part, real men that are in that situation, we believe that we owe it to our families to let them know we all right. Don't worry about us. We're fine. Everything's good. I'm going to this. I'm doing this. This is good. So you put that on. But a lot of times after pouring that out in a visit or on a phone call, and you hearing about what's going on, you giving them good advice. You got to stand through this. It's going to be all right, blah, blah, blah. When you get back to that cell, you like, we call it post-visit traumatic disorder.
Right.
That you actually have people be poured out after a visit. You know, and those people that see this, whether they're in state prison or federal prison, they know after a visit, and even the parents, the siblings, the wives, the husbands that go to a visit, they're okay in the visiting room, but when they get back in that car, they go through a period of depression too. Right. And so it's and I went through that day. I mean, a lot of days, but that day it was like, I want out of here. This has got to end, you know. And so it ended. It did.
You know, it's kind of like, you know, after the funeral and all the family members go home, and now you in the house, and you got that feeling.
Great analogy. Yeah. I always say I like to call people 2 weeks after the funeral. That's when you really figure out. That's when the person is typically sitting around feeling the loss and the missing person, and the soul has been taken away from their life. That's when it's like, you know,
Wow. So I forgot to ask you this earlier when I read in the beginning. Why law school?
This is funny. I never really cared about being a lawyer. I just knew it would legitimize me for whatever political position I was going to go after.
Okay.
And when I was when I was teaching school, I got to back up. My then wife came home and told me that she was pregnant with twins. I was teaching school. I love my job, but I was making $29,000 a year. And I couldn't see taking care of anybody else but the two of us with $29,000 a year. I couldn't go to steps to get up to $60,000 that would take 5 or 6 years to do. And so I said, I got to go do something. And I went down that day to Detroit College of Law. And I said, how do you do this? And I registered for the LSAT. I did it all kind of like to start moving me forward. But once I said, hey, I'm about to run for office. You know, my mother came back a year later after I started law school and said, hey, I'm about to run for Congress. I said, I'm running for your seat. And so I really got into law school at that point because I said, these people are not going to elect nobody 25. You know, it's like at that point now it's pretty commonplace, but then everybody was old. You know, it was nobody like young. It'd be once in a while. But I ran for office and won, and then when I ran for mayor, I wanted to hurry up and finish and get past the bar, which I did, and run for mayor so I could say an attorney. And it did legitimize me because everybody was too young. But I had more degrees and more stuff than the person running against me, and he was 60. I didn't have more life experience. But I had the education to back up some of the stuff that I was saying.
Okay. Now, you were a part of, as a mayor, you were part of, bringing the Super Bowl to Detroit, right? You were big with that.
Well, yeah. The previous mayor and his administration, they actually got the Super Bowl.
Okay.
But we had to do all the preparation. He was going out. So when, we got the Super, when I got elected, we had just gotten it 6-7 months before.
Okay.
And so the Super Bowl was coming in 5 years. So we did the 5-year preparation for the Super Bowl. So everything that you see in Detroit, downtown, the whole changing of downtown, rerouting streets, all of the riverfront, development, every one of the casinos, the parks around downtown, all of that was us. And
the restaurants.
Yeah, restaurants, the shops. We built 7 hotels in 5 years. And so Detroit hadn't had a new hotel when I took office since 1989. It was the Athenaeum was the last new hotel that was built. We built 7 hotels in 5 years. We built out the riverfront. They were talking about the riverfront when I was a kid, developing the riverfront from bridge to bridge, from the Belle Isle Bridge to the Ambassador Bridge. And it never happened. And we did it in 5 years. And so the activism and movement during that time was off the hook. It was really amazing.
I noticed they don't talk about that either. They don't hardly bring that up when they're talking about Kwame. You know what I'm saying? It's like you have to, or somebody else has to bring that up to remind them of all the work that was done.
Any black politician who gets elected to anything, and that includes dog catching, should know that all eyes are on them, that people around them are going to be envious and resentful and corrupt. And there are people out there to corrupt them and to get them to turn on you.
It's you're never going to hear an attack on my work, or you're not going to hear a lifting up of the work. We just hate him. It's going to be all about him, and they're very careful to do that. You know.
See, going back to colonial times and slavery times, the idea was put forth that blacks cannot govern. They're still trying to prove that blacks cannot govern.
I was watching Harry and Meghan on Netflix, and I was listening to Harry talk about what they did with his wife, and they would show William's wife, same kind of dress, and they'll report it in one way. And then they'll show her same dress and they report it in a whole nother way. And he said, there's master manipulation with the press. If people don't believe that there's master manipulation, how they report stories, how they do bylines for the stories. And I'm sitting there like, okay, he understands.
Anybody who does not know that that Detroit is surrounded by a bunch of haters, it's not in the real world.
And that's kind of like, it was a campaign. I call it the niggerization process. It was a campaign. I talk about that in the book, to make you the blackest, the most criminal, the most.
That's certainly the message being delivered in the city of Detroit today, that blacks are wholly ineffective in their ability to govern blacks, and that we've had our time in leadership, and that time needs to come and has come and needs to now go. You know, and it's a ridiculous notion.
They used to have cartoons in the papers with me with like dreadlocks with big gold chains. A couple of them I had gold teeth. I said, man, how is this even allowed? But this was prior Black Lives Matter. I don't think they could do that today.
Do it now, yeah.
But I mean, back then it was something. Every day I woke up, it was something like that. You know, I contributed to it at the end, and I don't absolve myself from that. But it was hard sledding. In 2002, 2003, we had the lowest crime rates in the city for 3 years. We were back to 1960s crime rates. Well, that's how we were able to get the Major League Baseball All-Star game, the G8 or that time Summit. That's how we were able to get a lot of development money and get our bond rating up. But they wouldn't report it. They would not report those things. They would just talk about me.
That's the Kill Kwame campaign, you know.
Kill Kwame.
What they say? You a combination of Suge Knight, Bumpy Johnson, and who else was Nino Brown?
Yeah, what they said. They said they would show pictures of me with the Bonsalito on for the narrative, and it was something. I saw Mike Tyson one time on television. He said, "You have to admire some people's treachery." I said, that is a great line. I really did admire how they were able to paint this picture at one time. But then I saw the devastation, not only to my life, my ex-wife's life, my children's lives, but also citizens in the city of Detroit who lost a lot of hope, partially from my, craziness, but the other part of it, because they were constantly sold a message that you're not good enough and who you produce is not good enough. And that's been destructive to the city as well.
You know, I like how you you phrased it, 6'4", 300-pound, black, bold, and educated with an African-American name who walks around with confidence and swagger. It's easy for people to believe all the fake news that was pushed out at that time, because that's the truth. Because if they paint that picture, not saying that you didn't, have a lot, something, not a lot, but something to do with that, because you said that, with your attitude and but the way that they double down and triple down on that, man, and carried that, they still doing it. It's something, I still see that out here. Like when I was just getting ready to interview, I was going through YouTube, and I'm like, good gracious, it's 1 million videos out here of you, man, and they still pound. I'm like, there's no need to talk about that. If they want to hear about that, they can go to YouTube and watch all of that stuff, man, because there's so much out there, man.
So much. I mean, I didn't even know it was as much as it is. My sons used to tell me about it on visits, and I said, why do y'all watch this stuff? It's like, it's just crazy. They was on there arguing with people and talking about it. I said, just leave it alone. I could say on this part of life is helpful because whether it's Sony or all the people who are coming to us now about opportunities, whether it's a docu-series or whether it's a scripted piece, is good because it's so much about Kwame Kilpatrick. Who knows? When I moved to Dallas, you could ask the average person in town, including my neighbor Kenny, he had no idea who the mayor was. I'm telling you, he didn't even know his name or anything. But the focal point of the mayor of Detroit is such a different thing, like the mayor of Chicago, the mayor of Detroit. There are times where people are so focused on City Hall. And then I've been gone 20-something years. And people still, I was just in Orlando yesterday. And I was at this leadership summit with Bishop Jakes. And the people are, hey, I'm walking around like, how do you even, I don't remember. I was in the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and I don't even remember about 80% of the people who were mayors at that time. I don't. But people remember because of YouTube and the name over and over in the news cycles. And, by the grace of God, it's helpful now to doing new things in my life.
Yeah. I never could understand this, and maybe you could explain this to me. When you found out that your attorney was not really on your side and you requested to get a new attorney, why wouldn't they let that happen? Because I remember how you painted the picture when you walked around the table and said, man, I'm going to beat your ass.
Yeah.
You had got to a point now where it was over with. But if it was known like that and you said it, why couldn't they replace it, your attorney?
They could have, but federal judges have immense power. And I know people hear that all the time, but you have no idea unless you've been in trial or in the process. You don't really understand how much power they have. You often hear on the federal level that we need to give more discretion back to the judges. Well, there are people who have what they call good judges that want that. But for the most part, that wouldn't be helpful either. We just need to make sure the law says what it needs to say and stop putting all of these things in it that gives prosecutors the leverage to cross-reference things and all this kind of stuff, to add up dope, to take ghost dope that nobody ever saw and give people life, because it starts being based on the humanity that's in front of them. Let me just say that. But then let me talk about this. My attorney took a witness against me to the grand jury and coached him as he was testifying against me in his testimony to put me away. I didn't find that out until a couple of days before the trial was to begin with the jury selection. I was just happened to be going through discovery from the trial and saw it. And I called him and everything. You got that in the book. I tell about it in the book. But when I got there, I was like, man, you got to get off the case. What are you doing? And I didn't know about the other two conflicts. I just knew about this one. Right. And I went to the judge myself. She wouldn't see me. But that day she called a hearing to discuss it, an in her chambers hearing. When I got there, it was like the team. You asked the question, why wouldn't they take him on? The team was there and he was on their team. It was the prosecutors, him, and the judge. And it was real interesting to see that room. And then everybody that spoke, including the prosecutor and judge, he has a tremendous reputation in this building. I'm not taking him off. The prosecutors, we've had great interworking with Mr. And I said, Your Honor, with all due respect, what does this have to do with my constitutional rights?
Right.
My right to conflict-free counsel. I mean, I don't understand. He might be the greatest guy ever, but not for me,
Right. Right.
But the fix was in. She said Detroit needs closure. I said, Judge, Your Honor, with all due respect, Detroit's not a defendant in this case.
Right.
It was just ridiculous. Everybody in that room has sworn oath to protect the defendant's rights, prosecutors, judge, and the defense attorney. They all have an equal right to protect my right to a fair trial. They didn't do it. We find out that there are 2 more conflicts. She didn't ask about them in that hearing. The Free Press does an article about how his firm is representing the county, Macomb County, which is right next, adjacent to Wayne County, where Detroit is. They're suing me on the very same RICO charges that are in the criminal case, and his firm is representing the county. So that trial is going on upstairs on 8. We're on 3. Simultaneously, his firm is on the other side of an issue against me, and he's supposedly defending me. But if he got a guilty verdict in the criminal case, it enhances their ability to get $54 million from the city. So I started to see the nexus between why they were keeping him on. Mm-hmm. It was the fix was in. Mm-hmm. Here's the issue, though. I lost the criminal trial, and I represented myself in the civil trial. And I won representing myself from a jail cell, going in the case manager's office and arguing my case, writing my own motions, and I got it dismissed with prejudice. So I can get it dismissed on the civil side, but I couldn't win in the criminal side because the judge would not take this guy off of my case. And so it was really interesting to see, but she's been biased the entire time. She was biased in the beginning, and she was biased at the end. But I like to say this, even when I got in the cell and you read it, the book, her words end up being the catalyst for the greatest change in me. And so at the same time, I know she was biased. I know she was also used by God to help transform my life. And so for that, I'm thankful. Yeah, I'm thankful. But this system, I'm hopeful to enter into the discussions. I started this weekend with a couple of organizations because, the president now, love him or not, he's not focused on criminal justice. Democrats had the presidency. They had the House and the Senate at one time. Now it's a tie in the Senate. They still haven't moved the criminal justice bill. Joe Biden would have to go against himself to change what's happening now in the criminal justice system because his bill is the one that caused the most disaster in the federal system. So I'm hopeful that we can start having discussions about how to do things without Congress, because there's some simple regulation changes, rule changes that we can use to stop getting people from getting so oppressed in this system.
And I hear that a lot. I was telling you the other day that me and my partner had just left 2 prisons up in Ohio and speaking at the prisons. And that's what you hear a lot from those guys, is that it's almost like Trump was more on their side when it came to that compared to Biden when it comes to that. And it's like, I guess they're reading information on that, but you have enough information on that to even make that statement, right? Absolutely.
And Donald Trump, Donald Trump is Donald Trump. The personality, stuff that he said, I know it's gotten on some people's nerves and really had people have an immediate emotional reaction. But he was the most helpful president that we've had in the area of criminal justice, period. Because he was the bully that could get it done.
Right.
Criminal justice issues are not popular for legislators. It's like, why should I get involved in this? Especially now. You got all these young folks out here going crazy, killing folk all over America. Every city has had a rise in crime, rise in violent crime. Nobody wants to hear about anybody voting for a bill that would give opportunity for people to have mercy or a second chance coming out of prison now. No, these people are all criminals, categorical. I hate lawyers. I hate politicians. Prisoners need to stay. We categorize people all in one bag. And so the inmate that's in there that got caught when he was 19 with 83 grams of crack, and now he's sitting there at 45. something that he should have got 5 or 6 years for. They put him in a conspiracy, cross-referenced him with the 2K1 and gave him life in a conspiracy with 20 people, of which he don't even know 19 of them. That happens over and over and over. That's not an isolated case. That's how they prosecute. That person got a life sentence for never having more than $2,000 in his pocket, and he was 19 years old. So and he's never done anything nonviolent. And a lot of these people are first-time offenders. Why don't we have opportunities for these people to get another chance? So you can make a mistake or you can mess up bad at 19, 20 in a nonviolent way, and you never get out of prison. Most Americans, if you had that discussion with them at their coffee table, would be like, that's probably not fair.
Right.
And now more and more poor whites are going in because of meth.
Yep.
Yeah, and so now you get the issue, just like we had with the opioid crisis versus the crack crisis. You're getting the issues now with a lot of young whites going in the prison system now because of the meth problem that is in Iowa and Nebraska and all these other places around the country. And so now people want to have the discussion because they're getting tougher and tougher on meth laws. So these guys were coming in getting 3 or 4 years. Now they're getting 17 and 20 years, and they're 19, 20, 21 years old. And so these are conversations that we can get. I went and spoke at the SOSO, which is the Social Conservative Conference. And I was trying to get the nexus, between the message of life, the message of redemption, the message of Christ. And if you really care about life, then you got to care about the life after it's here too. You can't just care about the preborn life. We want people to have equal opportunity to justice, equal opportunity to access for opportunity. And so that's what we were talking about there. I ended up getting a standing ovation.
Wow.
Because I believe that people don't know the facts. I believe
they don't. We're so busy running around doing, everything. You don't have time to even slow down to even understand that.
Yes. And so everything is kind of soundbite because that's what the media needs to do. They need to show you something in 5 minutes, the whole thing, 3 or 4 or 5 stories, and then get you over to sports. So as people don't have really time to actually have a conversation about what's happening in America, with over 9 million people cycling through the county jails, a few 100,000 people in the federal system, and almost 2 million people in the state systems around the country. 85% of the people that I just named, they're getting out within 5 years. What do you have for them?
Right.
What are you doing in your towns? They getting out. There ain't nothing you can do. They're coming out of there. 85% of those millions of people, they coming out of there within the next 5 years. So those are the people that are committing the new crimes. But the same recidivism track that says 80% of them come back in 3 years is actually reversed if somebody has served over 15 years. Only about 20% of them come back. So why aren't we taking the people from the longest and really starting to figure out what happened with them? What has changed in them? Right. And it's just some data I think that we can employ in some of these conversations to really get people to move, particularly from a policy perspective. I'm so hopeful, Tony, that I can get in front of some of these people, not just Democrats, but I believe the Black Caucus needs to be stronger on this. They really do as a unit. I also believe the Mexican caucus and all of the other folks that are in there, but particularly conservatives. This is an issue of life, and it's an issue of fairness and second chances, redemption.
And it takes, somebody like you, because they're going to try to tear you down as you start moving that way. I already noticed that. I saw a video of one of the young ladies talking about you and the things that you were doing. And I said, the Kill Kwame campaign is still out here now. So I'm just telling you,
no question.
It takes somebody like you to break through that. Being a part of the system, you see it more clearly than you probably saw when you was a mayor. You didn't, by being a part of it, now you see it. I remember in the book when you talked about when they came in and moved you up north. Remember, and you didn't know where you were going. And you told the story about sitting out there watching all those guys unload off the bus. Yes. And it looks like Jamestown.
Yeah.
That was, you painted that picture, man. That was really
good. That's good. I'm glad you saw that. That's how I felt. I actually felt like I was removed from what was going on while I was watching it. And like I said in the book, they called my name. I said, oh, I realized I'm a part of it.
Yeah.
I'm looking at all of these men get off one bus in change, shuffled around to another bus, get in that line up here, get over here. All right, you four over there, get in. I mean, I was like, wow, I've seen this before on movies. It was a very sobering experience, but I know what it is now. And a lot of those men, the statistics say they'll never have the kind of life that will produce any type of fruit.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do? Most of them reoffend. And so that sounds okay until they reoffend by knocking your wife or daughter your kids over the head. And so at some point, there has to be another conversation about how we do reentry, how we do prisons. More and more in prison. Listen, in the federal system now, I only had a few prisons that have programs. I was at a prison, Fort Dix, which is the largest federal facility. It's over 4,000 inmates there. They don't really have anything but GED. So if you got your GED, ain't nothing for you to do. Sit around, and everything is in prison. Drugs, liquor,
everything's there.
It's in there. And so what if you're 24, 23, 25, going in, or 35, going in there and you got 10 years to do and you get to go to this prison, what do you do for the 5 years you're there before they move? You become a worse person, a lazier person. And so people like me going to people, hey man, get in this GED program. What's your name, big fella? Oh, blah, blah, blah. We working, but it needs to be some institutional transformation. So people understand these people are coming out here, and it's a lot of them that don't want living next to me either.
Right.
You ask the average person that's been, it's a lot of people we don't want living next door to our moms and people either. Let us help you with that. Let us talk to you about how we can look at it. I was talking to a warden, an ex-warden. He was from Coleman Federal Institution. We were talking about we could go in a prison and feel the environment. I've been in 5 federal facilities and 3 state facilities. I can feel the environment as soon as I'm there. I know whether I need to go, it's going to be a knife fight tonight. I know whether this is a cool spot. I know as soon as I get there, you can feel the tension.
Pulling up to it, you can feel it. Yeah, my partner tells me that.
Yeah, you can feel it. And you know what kind of spot it is as soon as you get on the ground. And we need more people who have that experience to assist the government leaders with trying to figure out how we find ways to move people from prison to work and prison to society.
Yeah, it's not talked about a lot. And, because most people feel like, okay, we caught the criminal, throw him away for life. And 9 times out of 10, most of them are not going to be there for life. Even though they might be sentenced for life, if they start changing, they're going to leave out anyway. So I don't know if they can build enough prisons, for how many they're actually putting in. Yeah. But I don't think, like you said, it's not discussed, it's not talked about. So it's not on our minds to really focus on that. And it needs to be more of that, like you said. And that's part of your goal.
Yes, that is. I want to make sure it's a lot of people that I left in that place that I need to really advocate for. I spend a lot of time helping people with paperwork, filing on behalf of
I talked about that.
While I was there.
Public speaking also, you was helping them with that, right?
Yes, I did a public speaking class, a cognitive skills class, employability skills. A lot of guys ain't never had no job. They never did a resume.
Right.
They don't know how to do a job in them.
Yeah. Checking account.
Yeah, they ain't never had none of that.
Yeah.
So really helping people to understand that kind of thing, because a lot of these guys are extremely bright. They just never had those experiences. And so how do they and we all, when we get pressure, we go back to what we're comfortable with. I was just teaching a Bible study on Peter, and as soon as he lied and said he didn't deny Christ and all of that, right after that, he said, I'm going to fishing. It was too much for him. I'm not doing no more. I'm going back to what I was doing when Christ found me. I'm going to go fishing.
That's what I know.
And that pressure put him back in the same spots. Well, that's the same thing that happened with a guy getting out of prison. He tries to find a job. He tries to move up. But when it gets pressure, the baby mother, the wife, the kids, the stuff, I don't have anything. He's used to having stuff. he goes back to what he's used
What he
to.
knows.
He goes
Right.
back to what she knows. And so the problem becomes, how do you move that mindset out where they have an absolute certainty in what they're good at somewhere else? Because most of what I hear, even in phone calls and meetings, it's I don't know what else I'm good at.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you've been sitting there for 7-8 years and you don't know what you're good at because nobody has any programs to address that. And so places like El Reno have so many programs, and then places like Fort Dix have none. That has to change.
Mm-hmm. When you talk about pressure, I think of an analogy of the first 3 years. I'll say the first 2 years in Atlanta with Michael Vick. When the pressure hit him in the pocket, he took off running because that's what he knows. You know what I'm saying? When they start coming at him and they collapse that thing, you're going to go back to what you know what to do is just take off running. But after a while, after you start learning more and getting more information, then you'll stay in that pocket a little longer until you get results. And it's the same thing with people coming out. Once they get more information and understand what they can do out there, then they'll stay a little bit more on track trying to find a job or trying to do something if they got an idea or if they learned the trade.
Yes.
You know, you're like, okay, eventually I know I can do this stuff. Somebody's going to let me in the game. But if you don't think that you know anything anyway, and then as soon as you get hit with, you know, you're a felony or, you know, we ain't going to hire you because of this and that, you got a felony or whatever. And that pressure, like you said, is coming on and they don't have any other thing to fall back on. I hate even growing up, at one point, they took all the trades out of the school system. You know what I'm saying? They took that away. I think with this AI thing now, a lot of folks need to go back to the trades because
absolutely, absolutely,
you know, you need to have something to do with your hands because the computer's going to be doing everything.
Everything, and the vocational stuff is the money maker for the future. You know, people coming out of colleges in droves, unless they got some kind of specialized skill, you're going to be working way beneath whatever degree you got. You just are.
Yeah.
So right now, you got lawyers teaching. You know.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah, you got people waiting for residency working in Nordstrom's. You know, it's a time period, and then malls are closing. Different stuff. So being able to do carpentry, metalwork, welding, that stuff is going to become more important. But like you said, with the AI. So if you could do data entry, data management, stuff that you can go a 2-year program, 1-year program with, you can come out now making $60,000, $70,000 with benefits.
Right.
So I think that if we had people that understood that and can go into the system and start, you know, helping people kind of map out. At El Reno, they had a welding program. Those guys were coming out of there getting hired on release. All of these guys. One of the guys, Tony in Dallas, he's working at the Parole racetrack. He's building cars. He's doing all kinds of stuff. Very successful. But he was in for 20 years. But he became an expert welder while he was there. So when he got out, he had many offers for jobs. Same thing. If you don't have anything, that guy's not going to reoffend. That guy got a house. He got a wife. He doing really good. Right. But there's some other guys, hey, you didn't show me anything. I was in there for 10 years. You showed me nothing. You gave me nothing. I had a GED when I came. You know, it's what do you do?
Right. You know, couple of things you talked about, and I'd like for you to paint that picture for me or explain to us about the federal system in the courts, in the federal court system, when you said that they pretty much can bring up anybody or tell any lie in there that they want. It doesn't matter, have to be a truth, and it's actually where it can be heard. You know, like, you know, sometimes you be thinking that, wait a minute, you can't just put anybody in there, but you're saying that with the Fed system, they'll do that.
Yes.
Any person who commits a crime where they suspect that there may be other people involved, if it fits within RICO, and RICO requires that at least 2 crimes be committed within the last 10 years. So if you're familiar with conspiracy doesn't require that, but once you get the 2 crimes, then they go to the RICO where you get the more exposure to punishment.
We learn in law school, those of us have been in any law school in America, we learn in law school in evidence class that there are 2 different types of evidence. There's direct evidence, and then there's circumstantial evidence. You hear it all the time on Law and Order. That's based on a state evidentiary system in the courts, not on the feds. Circumstantial evidence and direct evidence are not weighed the same at any trial. As a matter of fact, the average person, that's circumstantial. You know, you can say that in the barbershop. People know that. Right. You ain't got nothing direct. You ain't got no fingerprint. You ain't got no blood. You ain't got no hair. You ain't got
smoking gun.
Yeah, man, you just got that's hearsay you got from old girl. We all talk like that. That's not something that's real technical. So old girl told you that, you're gonna believe her over me.
Yeah.
You know, so you got that's circumstantial. That But in the federal system, circumstantial and direct evidence is weighed the same. That's why 97% of the people that are indicted by the feds, they plead because they don't believe they can win at trial. It's actually over 97%.
The RICO statute carries up to 20 years, and the guidelines, the federal sentencing guidelines, are more severe under the RICO statute than they would be under, for example, an extortion statute. But again, it's not sufficient to simply say a single politician did something wrong. They've got to show an enterprise. Thus, for example, if they were able to allege that a state legislator took a bribe in return for a vote, that wouldn't be sufficient to charge him under the RICO statute. They would have to show that that legislature had an enterprise, meaning more than one person. So it would have to be the legislator, maybe his aide, and some other people that would be involved. And again, a single instance of bribery cannot be charged under the RICO statute. It's got to be what they call a pattern of racketeering, although the pattern only has to be 2 predicate acts.
And so those of us who choose to go to trial, first of all, you get punished more in the feds because they don't give you the benefits of anything that they give you with the police. So they're going to ask for the top of the guidelines. They're going to add more at sentencing. So most of the people that go to trial and get found guilty, you're going to get something more at sentencing, because sentencing, they can add time to you by preponderance of evidence, which is real crazy. But that's what happened to me. I walked in with a level about 10 years. After they gave me leadership role, intricate scheme, you did this, did that. I left out of there between 30 and life, and the judge said, I'm giving you a break. I'm gonna give you 28 years. But this federal system, if somebody says it, it's evidence.
Wow.
If somebody
you were talking about that, is a bunch of guys had a get out of jail free card as long as you say something about Kwame.
Listen, you had a guy named Derek Miller. I have him in the thing. He stole over almost $600,000 from a pension fund, totally unrelated to me. He used this other girlfriend of his. They stole money from a pension fund. Neither one of them did 1 day in prison. What did they do? They got in the room with the FBI. The FBI said, if you give us something on this guy, we'll work a deal with you. His lawyer put it together. He came in there and testified for 2 days to all kind of nonsense. They knew it wasn't true. My lawyer actually did a good job destroying everything he said, but he did what they said. He helped them immensely. He put the RICO claims together for him. He ended up walking out of there and did nothing, not a day in jail, didn't pay back the money to the senior citizens who lost their retirement money, and he's walking around today.
Then once they smear you, they don't need to have real stuff on you.
Because that's all you have to do for evidence. You just say it. And so those people who are watching this that understand this, if you can go to, and this is when it gets horrible in drug cases. I could be a drug dealer. I'm trying to put somebody away. I could just go in and testify and say, I gave Tony, I gave him a key every month for 12 months. So although when they busted you, Tony, they never found any drugs, they never seen any drugs, they don't have anything around, they take the drugs that I sold you and they say, well, that's 12 keys. And they put that on you and indict you for 12 keys. And the evidence of the 12 keys is not any 12 keys, it's not anybody doing anything.
It's just him saying it.
It's him saying he sold it to you. Then they go get somebody to say they bought drugs from you every week. They got an ounce from you every week for 2 years. And then they add that drugs and they relate them together.
What did you see as the verdict came down today in the courtroom?
What I saw was a total miscarriage of justice. The first count, when they said that, I knew that this wasn't going to be a good day. A racketeering count, RICO. That's why they did it like that, on a conspiracy kind of a deal, because you don't have to have evidence for that.
And it's the craziest thing in the world, because this guy then ends up with life for 12 keys. And nobody's ever found any drugs anywhere.
Right.
Now, everybody's saying, oh, they don't do that. They do that almost in every drug case over the last 30 years in this country. Most of the guys sitting in prison, the overwhelming majority of the guys that are sitting in prison right now still for drug cases, they ain't found no drugs. It's not saying that they weren't drug dealers.
Right.
Let's do it fairly. They just create.
What it does is it takes away the work of the cop to try to, do enough due diligence to catch this guy. So instead of going through all of that, let's just get some lies, put it together. We got it.
Got him. And that's the same thing in my case, in a RICO case, and I got convicted of a RICO. You just have to show that there was a continuing organization with the intent to do crime over a period of time. They got one witness to come in and say, yeah, we used to have meetings about doing crime. Oh, we had them like almost every month or every other month. And we got together and we would talk about contracts and doing crime. And it was an intention that, hey, some people were going to get paid. They had no evidence of any meetings. They had no, first of all, it never happened. This never happened. And there was no proof that anything happened. It was the most ridiculous thing. But the person who testified to that, he gotten in trouble before. And he was able to just get away scot-free. There's a woman who raised money for me. She came in. She had a $900,000 debt with the IRS. She had made a considerable amount of money over the years, far long before she came to work for me. And they told her, you're going to prison for 20 years. And yes, you tell her. So she said that every time she raised money, she came to my office and gave me money.
Yeah, I remember that.
And she pulled it out of her bra, 70-something-year-old woman. She was coming there pulling it out of her bra. Yeah, come on.
What about the lady who came over your house and all the TVs was up loud?
The guy. That was the guy. He sat down. He said, "Yeah, I came in there and the TV sets were all loud, and it was, and I was in a dark room, and it was dark in the house and all this." Now, mind you, I got 3 kids in this house and wife running around. I'm trying to figure out where everybody was.
It's 12 o'clock at night.
It's 12 o'clock at night. My wife didn't come out and say, who the heck is that? The kids didn't say, oh. Now it was dark and people were standing around, and he came in a room down the hall, and I was sitting in there, and I said, fix the contract.
Yes, sir.
And that's all I said. And then he walked out, and he was real scared, and it was real. I was in there like, whoa. And he was, now that guy who testified to that wasn't him saying it. He was allowed to testify that this was what the guy told him happened. And the guy that was testifying that he did, that guy had died. He died years before the trial.
You talked about that they brought evidence in from somebody who had died 6-7 years.
Man, 2 dead people testified at my trial through somebody else. Yeah, he told me, and she allowed it. Federal judges have immense power. I know you watch Law and Order and be like, I'm not going to allow that. Sit down, Mr. Such and Such. We're not going to. That doesn't happen in the federal court. They allowing everything. Yeah, bring that in too. Bring that in. It's not being offered for the truth. It's just for the state of mind. Bring it in. And the system, you never hear court reform. You hear prison reform, sentencing reform. You don't hear court reform. And that's when you hear police reform. Everybody wants to change some stuff, but nobody wants to touch them judges.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting piece too.
Tell me about ass and elbows. That's all he saw.
Hey, listen, people understand this. There are people who watch and you understand this. When you get in trouble, I mean, I'm talking about people that been down with you like 4 flat tires and a spare since you was a kid. I mean, y'all homies and everything. But when the pressure comes, when you lose all your money, when people coming after you, you look around and a lot of those people are not there. Well, when I got indicted and the feds were coming after me, when I looked around, I saw people, I'm talking about running, and that's what I said in the book.
Man, I laughed for 20 minutes on that one when you said
that's all I saw. I was calling people, they be like this, hey.
I ain't got nothing to do with that.
Oh, man, I don't want none of that. Yeah.
Going forward, what are you doing now, and how can people reach you?
What I'm doing now primarily is preaching and teaching the word of God. But I truly believe that should be a whole counsel of the Lord. So he said that we ought to minister to the least of these. So those that are in prison, we need to have something for beyond the word. We should visit with them. We should talk to them. We should understand what they're going through, and we should give them hope to come out. And if that hope is in the form of legal help, if that hope is in the form of family reconnections, we should do that. And that's something the ministry is involved in. Also, I'm speaking around the country. So if you want me to come in and fire up your people, I would love to do that, because I think right now we're living at a time where wrong is right and right is wrong. That there needs to be some voices that really stir us up to do right, to do right by one another and to do right by God. You can reach me at movementalministries.org. Movemental, one word, ministries.org. Come on our website.
We're going to put it at the bottom of the screen. Are you saying MOVEMENTAL?
Yes.
Okay.
Ministries.org, and ministries with an S.org. You can send me an email. We answer our emails. Come on in and let's talk about it. That's the best way to get us. But I just believe that right now it's a time for me to share the experience. I said this before. When you lose like I lost, when you get beaten like I did, when you go through trial and tribulation, but also you have the positive experiences, all of it makes for you to be able to help somebody else. Yeah. Because I don't want anybody else to go through what I went through. And there are some politicians out there, there are public figures, there are people who are public servants. They call on me also for some counsel. And, I can go right in and I can see what the problem is. You could be the most incredible person in understanding your budget and appropriations. You can understand the diversity of the economic base in your town. But if you're cheating on your wife, you're going to short circuit with the gift that you have. So How do we talk about developing your character at the same veracity and tenacity as you develop in your business acumen and your political acumen? And that's something else that I talk to people about based on my experience. Your gift to take you to a place that your character take you from. And so it's important for all of those things to come together in ministry and for us to be able to talk. Some people are such gifted leaders, but Hitler was a gifted leader.
Right.
And so it can go awry if you don't have a foundation of character and integrity to hold you in place. And so that's something else the ministry is doing. And also we call Behind Closed Doors, which is our consulting, mentoring, workshop part of our ministry as well.
Wow. Well, thank you, man. Boy, I don't want to let you go, but give me 2 quick books that you say everybody should read.
Ooh. Okay. I can't give you my favorite because it's 700 pages, but I mean, that's so hard.
One of my favorites is As a Man Thinketh. I really love that book.
That's a good book.
Yeah,
that's a good book. I read an incredible amount of books. I'm trying to give something that is so easy to read.
Exactly.
Oh, what's the one where the guy traveled? It was there all the time.
The Alchemist.
The Alchemist.
Yes, I love that book.
That's a great book, The Alchemist. I think another good book is a book that I don't know whether people like the Christian stuff, but Kingdom Man. It's by Tony Evans.
Kingdom Man, Tony Evans.
Yeah, Kingdom Man by Tony Evans. Okay. Great book.
Okay.
Great book. Miles Monroe has a great book as well by the same name. Both of those books, because it's not Christian-y, it's more character and integrity developing. And so I think it'll be good for anyone. Miles is excellent. And then Tony Evans is excellent because in our role as men, we owe a lot more than just to make money and sexual prowess. It's more
Right.
that we got to demand out of ourselves in this culture.
Man, appreciate your time. Wish you much success in the future. Hopefully we'll talk again later on, man. But look, I had to give it up to Marvin. Marvin set this up for us, man.
Yeah,
And,
Marvin Green, FAMU.
I know that's right. Marvin Green, FAMU. All right, Kwame, thank you, man, and much success in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate you. And thanks for the comments on the book, too.
All right. Yeah. Make sure y'all get. We're gonna push this up and make sure everybody order this book here. This is classic
Off
right
the
here,
grid.
You know, I got 3 or 4 guys already reading this, so I'm gonna get a bunch of more.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, man.
All right.
Make sure that you like and subscribe and hit the all button and all that kind of stuff, because we're gonna have a lot of good interviews on this podcast.